Version control is essential for backing up your projects in the cloud, collaborating with other team members, and having checkpoints you can roll back to if you mess up. But version control with Unreal Engine has always been quite problematic due to large file sizes and merge conflicts with blueprints. About a year and a half ago, I made a video about a new version control system called Diversion that specifically focuses on Unreal Engine and solved many of those problems. And you guys absolutely loved it for how easy it is to use. But since then it has evolved a lot, adding many new features, now having a desktop app with a graphical user interface and the full released version of their Unreal Engine plugin. So in this video I'll show you the easiest way to set up Diversion and how it helps us solve many of the issues we'll run into while working on our projects. Thanks to Diversion for sponsoring this tutorial and making version control much less painful. Now let's get started. Diversion is very simple to set up and it only takes a few minutes to get started. Go to their website diversion.dev, which you can find the link for in the description. And by the way, in the description you can also find a link to their Discord if you have any questions or need support with anything. Now on the website, click on Get Started, and here you can create an account with your email address, or you can just log in with Google, which is the easier option. Here in the dashboard you can manage your repositories and you can also create a new repository here, but we will first download the desktop app and do things from there, so click here. And then pick your operating system, for most of you being Windows. The file is about 100 megabytes large, so it shouldn't take too long, and once the download is done, just double-click the installation file. And then you can just go to Next, read through the terms and accept them, and then click on Install. And after the installation is over, it should then show you this screen from the desktop application, and you want to log in here again with Google or with the email that you set up before. And then here you should see the same thing with all of our repositories that you saw on the website, and we can create a new repository here. However, the way I prefer to do it with Unreal Engine is to first create the Unreal Engine project and then set up the repository. So let's do that. And now I want to create a new project with Unreal Engine, but you can of course use an existing project as well. I will use the game animation sample, which is for free, and you can find it on Fab if you want to follow along with this. But you can follow along with any project you want to. And I will create a new project using Unreal Engine 5.7, so I just pick it here and then create the new project. And here it's open in the editor now, and I can just start playing the game, and everything is working here. So now I want to set up the repository to save the state to be able to make checkpoints for this project and push it to the cloud and then share it with other people. So I can just open up the desktop app of Diversion again, and now I want to create a new repository here. And we have cool options here like being able to import an existing Git repository or a Perforce repository, but now I just want to create a new repository. For the repository name, I'm just going to call it GASP for the game animation sample project, and I want to create it from an existing folder, and here I now just have to find the folder where my Unreal Engine project exists. And Diversion is what I called it. And now I can just create the repository here. And after a few seconds, it then created the repository, and it's now syncing it with the cloud, uploading the files. Now how long this takes depends on how good your internet is, but the GASP project is quite large and it's handling it pretty well. But while this is happening, we can already click here to open up our interface that we can use to make commits, to check the history, and do things like that. One thing you can see here is that it automatically created the dvignore file, and if you're used to working with Git, that is the equivalent to the gitignore file, because Unreal Engine creates many different files that are just temporary that we don't want to upload to the cloud, but that we need Unreal Engine to run, that can be generated again for every user, for every team member that downloads this project. And as you can see, this is already set up for multiple different game engines, also of course including Unreal Engine, so we don't have to worry about this and just leave it as it is. And while the sync continues, I can click here on the triple dots and click on Repo Collaborators to invite my friends or team members here. And I'm just gonna invite my other PC to simulate working with multiple team members. Now on my laptop inside of the Diversion app, I can see the invitation here. I don't even have to go to my email, and I just click on Accept. And then it shows up here under all repositories. To download it, I then want to click on Clone Repository, so it shows up in my local workspace, and I can now decide where do I want to save this. And after I pick my file path and the name, I can just click on Clone. And after a little while, I can then see here that we have the first initial commit with the dvignore file, right? So I can click on History, click on the initial commit, and then on the all items tree, and I can see that this is the only file that was saved because the rest is still not committed, it's just on my other PC still syncing. Okay, now the repository is set up for both PCs, so let me go back to my desktop. And now on my desktop the syncing is complete, And I want to now commit this so that it is uploaded to the cloud and my other PC can also access it, my other team members can also access it. And I prefer to click on this view, the change tree, and I want to commit all of these folders and also the U project file. And I'll just write a quick commit message, and this should be current tense. So instead of saying added gasp, I want to call it add gasp to follow best practices. And then I can just commit my changes. And again, it just shows me what did we change? Well, we added the entire gas project, which is a huge change with 3,000 files, and I can then commit it. And you see how this commit happened instantly? Because the truth is, it was already synced to the cloud, all the files have already been updated, but now that it is committed, it is also available for the other members and computers here. And I can click on the history, and you can see here we have our add gasp with all of our changes. And without me having to do anything on my laptop, it now automatically detects this commit and it starts downloading, as opposed to GitHub Desktop where I would have to pull and do everything manually. And just like this, we can back up our project, we can make commits, and we can also work with other team members. But what's even better is that Diversion has an Unreal Engine plugin, so we don't even have to work in here in this interface. We can just do commits directly from Unreal Engine, we can get changes directly into Unreal Engine, and that makes it even better. Now back in my Unreal Engine project on my desktop, I can just open the content drawer and click on Fab to install the Diversion Fab plugin. I can simply search for Diversion here and hit enter, and you can see here Diversion version control is one of the first things that should come up, and you can just double check that it is Diversion Company Inc. For you, it should probably say free or something like this, and you can click it to add it to your library, and I already have it, so I can just click on View and Launcher, and then I can install it for certain Unreal Engine versions here. Click on Install Plugin, and I want to install it for Unreal Engine 5.7 in this case, but you can just pick whatever version you are using and click on Install. Now for the plugin to be detected, I have to restart the project. Then I can click on Edit, Plugins, and look for Diversion. And then here we have Diversion version control, turn it on, and then we have to restart again. Now the plugin should be activated. I can just look again, and yes, it is still active. The project has restarted, and then I want to turn it on for revision control, connect to revision control, and now for the provider, we should be able to pick Diversion here. It should then be able to detect your project folder and just click on Accept Settings. And now we are successfully connected to revision control. And you can see down here on main branch, we are synced, everything is working right now. And on a side note, we could have also set up the repository and did the first commit right here from the plugin without having to use the user interface of the desktop app. And now on the laptop, I also opened up the project and I also set up version control in the same way. Now I want to create a new blueprint and share it between both of these PCs. It doesn't really matter on which one I create it. I'll just quickly create a new blueprint here. It should be a launcher. I'm just going to call it bp_launcher. And then you can see it is syncing with version control the moment I created this. And I simply added a cube, a box collision, and then launch a character if it walks in here. And then I'm just going to drag it into the level here on top of the Unreal Engine logo. Now I can just start the game. I can run in here and I can see it pushes my character up in the air like a trampoline kind of. Okay, and this is the first thing that I created here. I see that it is synced here, and I want to now commit this to make it available on my other PC for my other team members. Now I could go back to the desktop app and commit my changes from here, but since we also have the plugin, I can just click here on revision control. I can go to commit changes, and then here I see my launcher, I see the update to the level, and the update to the U project file. And for the description, I'll just write make bp launcher, and then commit it. And this is it. This is all I have to do to make a commit that is now being synced to the cloud that other people, other team members now have access to. Now on the other PC, I don't even have to shut down Unreal Engine. I actually have this pop-up here that told me Diversion has some changes and I can just reload them. And then I just want to open up the map again. And I can see now here is the launcher that I placed on my other PC. And also in the content blueprints folder, I now have this BP launcher that was created on the other PC. I didn't have to shut down Unreal Engine. I didn't have to do anything. They just appear in my project now. And I can just play and everything works quite nicely. Now, sometimes you maybe don't want things to just appear while you're working on something. So that is a case where you could create a new branch, make your changes, and then after you're done, you can go back to the main branch. And as you can see, in just a few minutes, we set up a project, we pushed it to the cloud, and we can now collaborate with our team members. And this is great. But let's now cover a very common issue that often happens with version control, that two people update the same file at the same time. Especially with blueprints, this would lead to a merge conflict because it is a binary file that cannot be merged automatically. So we would have to throw away the changes of one person and only accept the changes of the other person. And this is still the case with Diversion. However, Diversion has many tools to warn us if somebody else is working on a file that we want to work on. So inside of the sandbox character, I just want to look for tick, and then here, I will just print the speed of the character. And now you can see at the top left, we are just printing the speed of the character. And I then want to make sure this is saved. And now let's say I want to make changes to the same character on my laptop. And let's see what happens. If I try to now change the character here, you can see this exclamation mark, right? It says potential conflict. Cobra Code is working on the main branch, not committed. And this is very important. I only saved the file on the other PC. I didn't commit them yet. But even if I'm just working on them, it already understands, because it is syncing to the cloud, that some changes are happening there. And this just lets me know that I probably don't want to work on this until my partner is done working on this character. And this just saves us so much frustration, because we could lose hours of work if we both work on the same character and we can only keep one version. Now, you could still open it up and make changes, but you only want to do that if you really know what you're doing, or if you just make temporary changes you might want to discard later anyway. And this was the general workflow you go through when working alone to set up your project, but also how you can collaborate with your team, how you can then both just make changes to the game, keep on working on it, concentrating on the game, and you're not gonna have to worry all that much about version control as long as you pay attention to the warnings. Okay, but let me also tell you about a few other features that Diversion has that can really help you improve your workflow. It has seamless integration with Git and Perforce, so you can use Diversion on existing projects. It has a generous free tier for up to 5 users with 100 gigabytes of free storage, and there's no credit card required. As opposed to GitHub, there's also no file size limit, and a single file can be larger than 100 megabytes. Now you can also just right-click a commit and you can undo or revert the commit right here in the desktop app. It allows for granular permissions so that even game designers and artists can work with your project, but they can't mess with the code. Another cool thing is that you can even edit commit messages, so if somebody wasn't following the best practices, you can update it later to make it fit. And it also has other features like webhooks, reviews, shelves, and so on. If all of that sounds appealing to you, download Diversion from the link in the description and give it a try. As always, a huge thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members.